السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. أما بعد. Inshallah, every 3 or 4 classes we try to do a review, inshallah, so we can keep up with the things we've studied, what we've learned, and for those who weren't present for all the classes. And it keeps the information, inshallah, firm in our minds, and that's the whole point of having classes and learning, so that we take the lessons from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ and we try to find ways to implement it in our lives. So inshallah, we're just going to do a review, inshallah, a brief review, and then inshallah the second half of the class we're going to continue with the seerah from where we left off, inshallah. So we started the seerah with talking about the Prophet ﷺ and how the Arab were before he was born, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his early life, the life of his family, his father, his grandfather. And we mentioned a lot of things, and inshallah, just to review some of this information, inshallah. So we spoke about the Prophet ﷺ's early life, and we spoke about his lineage, and who his father was, his grandfather, and his mother, and how he was, and the year he was born, and all of this information. So the Prophet ﷺ, we mentioned for him his lineage for 20 grandfathers up until Adnan, and that is the lineage that is agreed upon from the scholars of the nasab, the scholars of lineage, and the scholars of history, and the scholars of the seerah. After that, from Adnan, there's difference of opinion how Adnan reaches Ibrahim alayhi salam, but Adnan is from the children of Ibrahim alayhi salam, but the exact lineage between Adnan and Ibrahim alayhi salam is unknown. So we had some children who memorized the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ, and some adults. And inshallah, does anyone here want to try and recite some of the lineage? Everyone's nodding their head no.
Sorry.
Does anyone know at least 4 or 5 of the grandfathers? تفضل يا أخي. Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib bin
Manaf.
Before
Hashim.
Okay, Hashim,
Abd Manaf.
and then Abd Manaf,
Qusay.
Qusay, Kilab,
Kilab.
Were those guesses? Qusay, Kilab, Murrah. Okay, that's about 5 or 6. Can anyone add? He said Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib bin Hashim bin Qusay bin Kilab bin Murrah. Anybody? Sisters? Lu'ay? Okay, looks like that's it. So it was about 5 or 6, but alhamdulillah, that's good. At least you know the first or second grandfather is enough, inshallah. Muhammad, Abdullah, Abdul Muttalib, and Hashim. And Hashim is from the second grandfather, whom the entire family of the Prophet ﷺ get their family name, and that's why they're called al-Hashimi, from the second grandfather Hashim. So that's just a little bit of his lineage, and his father is Abdullah. His father is Abdullah. His mother was Amina. You listening? His mother was Amina. The mother of the Prophet ﷺ, her name was Amina. His father passed away before he was born. His mother passed away when he was how old?
6.
6 years old. Very good. And who took care of him after his mother passed away? His grandfather, whom is Abdul Muttalib. And Abdul Muttalib passed away when the Prophet was how old? 8 years old. Good. And who took care of him after that? His uncle Abu Talib. So when he was 8 years old, he came under the care of his uncle Abu Talib, and he stayed in the care of his uncle for a long time until he became an adult. We mentioned he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was born, some things about when he was born. The year he was born is known as what? Am al-Fil. Al-Fil means the elephant, the year of the elephant. And why is it called the year of the elephant? Who can give us a brief story or a brief explanation of why it's called the year of the elephant? You are Qasim, right? Tfaddal.
King, I think, sent elephant to attack the Kaaba because people started going to the Kaaba instead of his palace. And then when they started attacking the Kaaba, Allah sent birds with pebbles in their mouth to throw it at the elephants.
MashaAllah. Very good. So the brother gave us a brief explanation that there was a king who had, or he built a church in his land, and it was in the land of what's today known as Yemen. And this king was from Habasha, he was from Ethiopia, from Africa, and he built his church because he wanted people to come and make Hajj, so-called Hajj, to his church instead of the Kaaba. And a person from the Arab, he did not like this, and he sort of disrespected this church. And Abraha, this king, he heard about this and he became angry, and he said he wants to destroy the Kaaba. So he got his army ready, and they marched to the Kaaba with elephants to destroy the Kaaba. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent birds with stones and pebbles in their mouth, in their beaks and their claws, and destroyed his army and the elephants. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected the Kaaba. And this is from one of the signs that a prophet was going to come, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is protecting his home. His home and the Kaaba was being protected or being overlooked by mushrikeen. And even though these people are mushrikeen, worshipping other than Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still held sanctity for his home, and he protected his house, the Kaaba, from this army that came to destroy it, as a sign and a respect for the coming Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he was born in the year of the elephant. In what month? Rabi'ul Awwal. You sure? Allahu a'lam what month. What day? Monday. We said the only two things that are definitely known are the year and the day of the week, Monday. As far as the exact month and the exact day of the month, Allahu a'lam, the most famous opinion is Rabi'ul Awwal, the 12th of Rabi'ul Awwal, but this is not confirmed in any authentic source. The only authentic things are that he was born in the year of the elephant on a Monday. So that's when he was born, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And from the people that took care of him, or when he was a young boy, the Arab used to send their children to the desert so they can live in a more healthy environment and learn the more fasih language, the more eloquent and correct Arabic language from the desert people. And the person that took him when he was young and breastfed him her name was Halima as-Sa'diyya, and he went with her a couple of times to the desert and lived with her, and she found a lot of barakah in his presence there, and they enjoyed having him there, and she wanted him to stay with them longer and longer, until what event happened to the Prophet ﷺ that made her return the Prophet to his mother. Naam.
Angel Jibril came and took the Prophet's soul out and her heart and cleaned it and put it back in.
MashaAllah, she cleaned it with what? Jibreel cleaned his heart with what?
Water from Jannah.
Water from? Zamzam water. In what type of container? Container made of gold. Container made of gold. Washed his heart with the water of Zamzam, and washing away the influence of shaitan upon the Prophet ﷺ and purifying his heart. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We mentioned the Prophet ﷺ has several names, several different names. Of course, his name is Muhammad, as mentioned in the Quran. Also, another one of his names, first names mentioned in the Quran is Ahmad. And we mentioned some other names that are based upon some of his characteristics, like Al-Amin and Al-Sadiq. Who used to call him these two names? Who called him Al-Amin? Quraysh, the Arab, the Mushrikeen. They used to call him Al-Amin, the trustworthy, and Al-Sadiq, the truthful one, because he always used to speak the truth and he was trustworthy to them. What are some other characteristics that names were taken from those characteristics? Al-Aqib, good. Al-Aqib means? Al-Aqib means? He said, Al-Aqib alladhi laysa ba'dahu nabi. Yes, meaning he said he's Al-Aqib, meaning the finality, meaning there is no prophet or messenger after him. Al-Hashir. Al-Hashir means?
He will be, Muslim will be resurrected from his feet, I think.
Naam, the Muslimin will be resurrected in front of him or at his feet. Anybody else? Sisters, you have any? Some of his names mentioned in the Quran. Al-Muddathir, naam. Abu al-Qasim is his kunya. Naam, Abu al-Qasim is his kunya. Some of the things that Allah refers to him as in the Quran: Al-Muddathir, Al-Muzammil, naam. Inna arsalnaka shahidan wa mubashiran wa nadhira. We sent you as a shahid, as a witness upon mankind, wa mubashir, bringer of good news, wa nadhir, a warner of a punishment for those who do not come to Islam, wa da'iyan ila Allah bi'idhnihi wa sirajan munira, and the one who calls to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the illuminating light, siraj munir, and a lot of other characteristics that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls him by in the Quran. Naam? Taha? How? Well, tell me how. So what part of that tells us that's his name, Taha? We mentioned in that class that a lot of people think one of his names is Taha, just because of that ayah, that وَمَا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْقُرْآنَ لِتَشْقَى. Yes, Allah is talking to the Prophet ﷺ, but nowhere in that ayah refers to anything that Taha is the name of the Prophet ﷺ. Same thing with Yasin. Taha and Yasin, people think it's his name, But there's no hadith or anything to show that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to the Prophet ﷺ with these letters. These letters are al-huruf al-muqatta'a, the disconnected letters that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the meaning to, like alif lam mim, alif lam ra, taha, yasin, qaf, noon, kaf, ha, ya, ain, sad.
These are huruf al-muqatta'a.
They're known as al-huruf al-muqatta'a.
Muqatta'a.
Muqatta'a, yes, muqatta'a means disconnected.
Disconnect.
Yes.
So it's not a name that he's calling the Prophet, it's just the letters only.
What's that?
Just the letters to get attention, but not the name.
No, the letters are Allahu a'lam what they mean. There's nowhere in the Quran or the Sunnah that explains what these letters mean, but we read them as part of the Quran as the Prophet ﷺ read them and as the Sahaba read them. As for them being names of anyone or the Prophet or having a certain meaning, Allah knows best. We mentioned some things about the Prophet ﷺ when he became a young man. He married, his first wife was Khadija radiallahu anha, and the Prophet ﷺ, he was how old?
12?
25 years old, and Khadija radiallahu anha was 40 years old. So she was 15 years older than him, and she was his first wife. And while he was married to her, he did not marry any other woman. When he was married to her, she was his only wife. We spoke about the Kaaba when the Prophet ﷺ, further on in his life, the Kaaba needed to be rebuilt because of damage from floods and just it deteriorating. It needed to be rebuilt. So Quraysh, they decided to collect money amongst themselves to start the rebuilding of the Kaaba. What type of money were they collecting from amongst themselves, and what type of money did they not want to use to build the Kaaba?
Pure, other than riba.
Okay, so meaning they wanted,
Pure money.
in their terms, halal money. They still knew, even this is before Islam, they still knew what was right and what was wrong. So they had a sense of halal money and haram money. They only wanted to use money from halal sources, and they said, we're not going to use money from riba. Even before Islam, they thought that this was something wrong. Oppressively taking advantage of someone because they're not able to pay for something, so you make them pay more over time. So they knew this was wrong. Money from prostitution from women, they knew also this was wrong, and they left that aside. They did not use it for the rebuilding of the Kaaba. So they only used the halal money, and it wasn't enough because a lot of their deeds were haram, unlawful. So it wasn't enough money. So as we said, the building of the Kaaba was not completed. Only part of it was rebuilt. And the part that was not rebuilt is the area today known as, there's an area near the Kaaba with an arc, little small wall arc. What is it called now? Al-Hatim. It's called Al-Hatim. It's also called Al-Hijr. Al-Hijr. Ha, Jim, Ra. Al-Hijr. It's called Al-Hatim. It's called Al-Hijr. This is the area that they were not able to complete the building of, so they made the arc, the wall, to signify that this area is still part of the Kaaba, even though there's no wall there, which includes it into the Kaaba. But that wall signifies that this is from the original building of the Kaaba, and this area in the arc is considered from inside the Kaaba. That's why you don't see people praying in that area when there's a Jama'ah Salah. There's people praying around it, but not inside of the Hatim.
So that part was inside because I think the Kaaba was rectangular.
Yes.
Now it's square.
Now it's square. Now the Kaaba used to be bigger than it is today. Today it's like a square. in the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, it was bigger. It was in the shape of a rectangle. So that area is known as Al-Hatim. And when they came to put the black stone, who can give us a brief explanation of how the black stone was put in the Kaaba? What happened? What was the problem? Musa?
Musa, please help us out.
We got some candy, by the way.
That
Halima, you know?
they're
No.
talking.
Go ahead.
That the men were fighting. That who would put the black stone, and then Muhammad Sallallahu alaihi, sallam. They chose him because he's the prophet, and Muhammad Sallallahu alaihi, sallam put the black stone.
How? By himself?
No, but with the men. So it's
What did they do?
They put it on some kind of
A thobe?
You almost
yeah,
there.
A sheet?
yeah. And then they all grabbed one side of it, and then they put the black stone in.
Okay, who put the black stone in?
Muhammad.
Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
MashaAllah.
So he said that there was argument, or he didn't say that, but what he meant, that there was some argument amongst Quraysh on who will place the black stone, because they thought it was an honor to place the black stone, and each tribe, each qabila wanted to have that honor. So there was argument amongst them, and they didn't know what to do, and they said the first person who comes in, we'll ask him what we should do. And the person that came in was the Prophet ﷺ, and they said, oh, it's Al-Amin, As-Sadiq, the trustworthy one. And the Prophet ﷺ suggested to get a sheet, and they put the black stone in it, and they each grabbed a part of the sheet and lifted, and he ﷺ put the black stone in the Kaaba.
So those 4 tribes, all Quraysh, right? So Prophet ﷺ was not representing any of those tribes, otherwise again would have been a problem.
Well, they decided that whoever comes in next is going to decide, no matter who it is. So they didn't know who was coming in. He's representing, the Hashimi, Bani Hashim, and they just, because they couldn't agree, even though maybe there was another person from Bani Hashim, Allahu alam, but they just said, "Khalas, whoever comes in, we're going to let him decide what is going to happen," and it happened to be the Prophet ﷺ, and they just accepted his suggestion.
One off-topic question. So, from where did that stone come? We know it is from Jannah, but when did it come? Any origin?
Significance.
Where did it come from?
Like how did it came from Jannah? I think we know, but how did it come or something? Is that known?
Allahu alam, how it came. How it came? He's asking about the black stone.
Or when
It's from Jannah. It's a stone from Jannah. Allahu alam how it reached earth and the Kaaba and became part of the Kaaba. Allahu alam. Maybe this is something somebody can research and enlighten us with next time, inshallah. I guess that's you.
It's your homework only.
It's your
We are not part of it.
it's your question,
Next Saturday evening you will explain to us.
inshallah. So the Prophet ﷺ, I'm going to jump forward here a bit faster. He received first revelation when he was how old? 40 years old. And the first ayat to be revealed to him were, young boys, the first ayah to be revealed to the Prophet ﷺ? نعم إسحاق اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. The first ayah to be revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, which made him a prophet receiving revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet ﷺ, he started calling people to Islam, his family, his friends, close friends, relatives, calling them to al-Islam. You looking at the black box?
It's candy.
تعال تفضل.
Can I have one?
Come,
Can I have one?
take one. تفضل.
Yay.
قاسم تفضل. Suhaib,
Yum. Two.
one.
Friends, take this one.
And if there's any young girls who want some candy, ahlan wa sahlan. Ishaq, you answer the question, you can have some too, inshallah. And the adults. So the Prophet ﷺ began giving da'wah and calling to Islam, and people started to enter into Islam. From them, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Ali ibn Abi Talib, his wife Khadija radiallahu anha. And the Prophet ﷺ kept giving his da'wah to Allah and da'wah to Tawheed, and the people of Mecca were always opposing him, calling him a liar, calling him insane, crazy, majnoon, sahir, that he's been possessed or he's upon some type of magic or anything like this, because they did not want to believe in his message. They wanted to stay upon their shirk and worshipping the idols and not worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So from the main supporters of the Prophet ﷺ was his uncle Abu Talib, and he used to support him a lot, and he was a very important person in Quraysh and in Mecca, so his support was very important. And the Prophet ﷺ, he would always try to give him da'wah to bring him into Islam, and because he loved him very much, because he took care of him from when he was a very young boy. So the harm upon the Muslims became too much at some times, and the Muslims were tortured and even killed. And so the Prophet ﷺ gave them permission to make hijrah, and the place they made hijrah to was Al-Habasha. They made hijrah to Al-Habasha, a few of the Muslimin, because there was the Najashi, the king at that place at that time. He was a just ruler, he was a Christian, but he was just, he did not oppress people, and he let people live in his land no matter what their beliefs were. So he accepted the Muslimin to live in his land, and they lived there. And there was a couple times the Muslimin made hijrah there. They came back to Mecca and then returned to Al-Habasha. And we mentioned the accepting of Islam from Hamza radiallahu anhu and from Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, and that when these two persons entered into Islam, it gave the Muslimin a bit more strength and respect, because these were two people that were respected and even feared from amongst the Muslimin, because they were very strong, powerful, mighty, respected individuals, Umar and Hamza radiyallahu anhum. That is basically where we stopped last time, the Islam of Umar and the Islam of Hamza radiyallahu anhum. So inshallah, continuing back with the seerah, the Prophet ﷺ and his Sahaba, while in Mecca, they, as we said, experienced a lot of enmity from Quraysh, a lot of harm, a lot of opposition. We mentioned that they were boycotted the Muslimin were boycotted, and Abu Talib took them under his care in his shirab, his area, his valley. He let them stay in his area, and the people of Quraysh, they would not buy from them, they would not sell from them, they would not marry from them, they would not interact with them in any way, because they wanted to cut them off from all types of help and support, so that maybe they would leave the religion of Islam and come back to their religion. But the Muslimin, alhamdulillah, they were stronger than this, and they had their iman that kept them upon their deen. So the boycott ended, and still the Muslimin were finding harm from the people of Quraysh. And after a while, around the year 10 or 11 from the Bi'tha, the Prophet ﷺ, he lost his uncle Abu Talib. He passed away, and even a few days after that, he lost his wife Khadija radiyallahu anha. So it was a very sad time for the Prophet ﷺ. And his uncle passed away, Abu Talib. He loved him very much, and Abu Talib loved the Prophet ﷺ very much. He took care of him since he was 8 years old, and now the Prophet ﷺ is a grown man, 51, 52 years old. And they loved each other very much, and the Prophet ﷺ was always trying to give him da'wah to enter into Islam, teaching him about Tawheed, and that this is the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's better for him. And even upon his deathbed, the deathbed of Abu Talib, the Prophet ﷺ was trying to tell him, say La ilaha illallah, it'll be something I can intercede upon your behalf for on Yawm al-Qiyamah, something I will be able to help you with on Yawm al-Qiyamah. But still Abu Talib, he stayed upon the deen of his forefathers, the deen of Abdul Muttalib, and he died as a non-Muslim, and this made the Prophet ﷺ sad, not only that he didn't accept Islam, but that he died because he was the caretaker of the Prophet ﷺ from a long time. And he also lost his wife Khadija radiyallahu anha, who was a great supporter of him, who was the first believer in al-Islam, who supported him right away after he received his revelation, and he became afraid and not knowing what's going on, what's happening. She supported him. She told him of his good qualities, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to help you no matter what. Allah is not going to humiliate you. And she mentioned some of his good qualities. So he lost his uncle and his wife within just a few days, and he became very sad. It was a time of great sorrow for him and sadness, and still receiving harm from Quraysh and from Mecca. He kept giving da'wah. Even in this sad time, he kept giving da'wah, and he kept receiving harm and no response to his da'wah from Quraysh. So he decided to take a trip. The Prophet ﷺ decided to take a trip, saying, if these people are just going to keep harming me and not listening and not answering the call of da'wah, then he wanted to try different people. He wanted to try different people and give them da'wah. He kept giving da'wah, even through all these hardships and sorrow that he's going through, and loss of relatives and wife and family. He kept giving da'wah, and even if some people are not answering, he moved on to others. So he took a trip to Al-Ta'if. He took a trip to Al-Ta'if, and Al-Ta'if is a city outside of Mecca. Al-Ta'if is about 100 kilometers from Mecca, about 62 miles. And this is, as we said, this is about the year 10 or 11 after Al-Bi'tha. And the Prophet ﷺ went to Al-Ta'if walking. He walked from Mecca to Al-Ta'if, 100 kilometers. Now this isn't a paved road, this isn't a nice path, this is mountains, desert, elevation, through the desert, through mountains. It's not an easy path. It's not a paved road that he just walked on. So he went to Al-Ta'if on foot, him and who went with him? Zayd ibn Haritha. And we mentioned the story of Zayd ibn Haritha a couple classes ago. He went walking to Al-Ta'if with Zayd ibn Haritha, hoping to give da'wah to the people of Al-Ta'if, hoping that they would answer the call, and hoping that he would find some who would believe in Islam and support him, so that numbers of Muslimin would grow. So he went to Al-Ta'if and he called the people to Tawheed. He called the people to La ilaha illallah. He told the people, I am Inni Rasulullah ilaykum bayna yaday adabun shadid. He said, I am a messenger of Allah to you. I came to warn you of a punishment for those who do not obey Allah, and I came to give you good news of Jannah and maghfirah and rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those who enter into al-Islam. And he gave da'wah to the leaders of Al-Ta'if, he gave da'wah to the common people of Al-Ta'if, and it is said he was there for several days, maybe about 10 days or maybe less in Al-Ta'if, and he gave da'wah to many people in Al-Ta'if, and no one answered his call. No one from Al-Ta'if answered his call, and they even drove him out of Al-Ta'if. They kicked him out. They drove him out. They told him to leave disrespectfully. And even while the Prophet ﷺ is walking out, him and Zayd ibn Haritha, even as they're leaving Al-Ta'if, they are throwing stones at them, hitting them with stones, cursing them, such and such. Where the Prophet ﷺ, his feet became bloody from the stones and the rocks that were hitting his feet. And Zayd ibn Haritha, he would try to defend the Prophet ﷺ with his own body from the stones and the harm. He would put himself between the Prophet ﷺ and these people, and he became all bloodied up and he became injured. He got hit in the head with rocks, and his blood was coming down from his head, and he became injured, and they were both injured physically and mentally and emotionally. Because the Prophet came here from a place where he saw no hope in those people, the people of Mecca and Quraysh. And he went there hoping that these people will maybe come into Islam. Because this is what he wanted from the people, the hidayah, the guidance, the rahmah, the entering from, or the leaving of these people from shirk, coming out of shirk and coming into at-tawheed. This is what he wanted for the people. He did not want anything for himself. He did not want to just have a large gathering so he can say that he has a large group of followers. He wanted people to leave the darkness and go into the light. مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. He wanted the khair for the people. And this is another example of how he is rahmatan lil alameen, how he's a mercy for all of mankind, that he traveled on foot in difficulty and hardship and got harmed physically and mentally for the sake of guiding people, for the sake of showing people that this is rahmah, this is maghfirah from Allah, this is hidayah, this is nur, and what you're upon is something else. So he wants to guide them to the khair. So he always had the good intention to bring people into the guidance of al-Islam. So they threw the stones at them, they drove them out of Al-Ta'if, they became injured and bloodied up and everything, and this made him a bit more sad, the Prophet ﷺ, because still the people are harming him. It made him more sad, but still he has yaqeen, he has certainty that what he's doing is upon guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is upon wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that he knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him with this to warn the people, to teach the people. So he still had that yaqeen, and that he was content in his heart that what he's doing is correct, and what he's doing is al-haq, the truth. So it kept him going, even though he's experiencing a lot of sad situations, a lot of hard times from all the people around him, and loss of family and relatives. But still he keeps going with the da'wah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they left Al-Ta'if, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Zayd ibn Haritha, they left Al-Ta'if, and on their way back to Mecca, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to ease some of his pain. Allah wanted to ease some of the pain that he went through. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to him the angel Jibreel. Allah Azza wa Jal said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the angel Jibreel. So as the Prophet was walking back towards Mecca, he looked up into the sky and he saw the angel Jibreel. He said, فَانْطَلَقْتُ وَأَنَا مَهْمُومٌ عَلَى وَجْهِي فَلَمْ أَسْتَفِقْ إِلَّا وَأَنَا بِقَرْنِ الثَّعَالِبِ. So he said he left Al-Ta'if. He was worried and harmed. And he said when we reached Qarn al-Tha'alib is also known as Qarn al-Manazil, and it is the miqat of the people of Al-Najd. The people of Al-Najd who go to Hajj, their miqat, the place where after they pass by, they have to be in ihram and make their intention for Hajj, is called, used to be called Qarn al-Tha'alib, now it's called Qarn al-Manazil, and these are all places outside of Mecca. The miqat are all the places that surround Mecca, that whoever comes for Hajj from any direction from around Mecca, these 5 places, there's 5 mawaqit, the person who passes by them has to have the ihram clothes on and the intention for Hajj before he passes this place. So the people of Najd, their miqat is called Qarn al-Manazil. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, when he was in Qarn al-Tha'alib, he said, فَرَفَعْتُ رَأْسِي فَإِذَا أَنَا بِسَحَابَةٍ قَدْ أَظَلَّتْنِي فَنَظَرْتُ فَإِذَا فِيهَا جِبْرِيلٌ فَنَادَانِي فَقَالَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ سَمِعَ قَوْلَ قَوْمِكَ لَكَ وما ردوا عليك ولقد أرسل إليك ملك الجبال لتأمره بما شئت فناداني ملك الجبال وسلم علي ثم قال يا محمد إن الله قد سمع قول قومك لك وأنا ملك الجبال وقد بعثني ربك إليك لتأمرني بأمرك فيما شئت إن شئت أن أطبق عليهم الأخشبين فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بل أرجو أن يخرج الله من أصلابهم من يعبد الله وحده ولا يشرك به شيئا. So he said, while we are passing by Qarn al-Tha'alib, he looked up into the sky and he saw Jibreel there. He saw a cloud above him, and he saw Jibreel beyond that. So Jibreel called upon the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has seen and heard what these people have done to you and what your people have done to you in Mecca, not just Al-Ta'if and Mecca, what your people have done to you and the harm that has come upon you from these people, and that they rejected you and they drove you out. And Jibreel said, Allah has sent with me the angel of the mountains. Allah has sent along with me, or with me is also the angel of the mountains, so that you can command him to do whatever you want. So Jibreel said, this is the angel of the mountains. And the angel of the mountains, he called upon the Prophet ﷺ. He said, Ya Muhammad, أنا ملك الجبال وقد بعثني ربك إليك لتأمرني بأمرك فيما شئت. So the angel of the mountain said, Ya Muhammad, I am the angel of the mountains, and Allah has sent me to do whatever you command me to do. He said, إن شئت أطبق عليهم الأخشبين. If you want, I will crush them between the 2 mountains. Speaking about the people of Mecca. There's 2 mountains around Mecca, they're known as Al-Akhshabain, Al-Jabalain. The angel of the mountain said, if you want Muhammad, I will take those 2 mountains and bring them together and crush and destroy all of Mecca if you want. And the Prophet ﷺ from His mercy. Again, another example of His mercy to all mankind, rahmatul alameen. He said, no, rather I would hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring forth from these people even one person who says La ilaha illallah, worships Allah alone and does not commit any shirk. So you see that the Prophet ﷺ, this is not something, he does not think it's something personal towards him. And he's not taking it personal. And he's not taking it as an issue of qabila, this tribe and that family, and that these people are just against me. He's taking it as an issue of guidance, hidayah, and dalal, and misguidance. And that he wants guidance for people who are, as long as they still have breath and still have a beating heart, then he thinks that there is, inshallah, hope for them to become Muslim. Even though they harmed him, they tortured his companions, and many, many other things happened to him, he still gives them a chance from his mercy, his rahmah. And that he could have said, yes, khalas, destroy them, but he's our example. He's the example we follow, and this is an example of mercy and rahmah, and that you still want hidayah from someone, for someone, just like you want it for yourself. If Allah guided you to Islam, guided you to the Sunnah, guided you to good akhlaq, you still want this for others also. You don't just have it for yourself and, laugh at other people who don't have it. You want the same thing for them that you have for yourself. And this is what he wanted. That he said, no, leave them. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring forth someone who believes from them. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sent the angel Jibreel and the angel of the mountains to the Prophet ﷺ to show him that Allah is still there and still with him, that Allah is supporting you, and that yes, these people are harming you and everything, but still Allah is there supporting you and knowing what's happening to you, and that Allah is not going to forget what you're going through, all the hardships you're going through, and the sabr, and that all of this requires a lot and a lot of sabr. And this teaches the Prophet's trip to At-Taif and back, and the mercy he had upon his people. He's showing us sabr in da'wah, that nobody followed him from that trip and back. Nobody believed in his message, and he was harmed and injured physically and emotionally. But he found no one to follow him and enter into Islam. But he still had sabr. He still had patience, that everything is in the hands of Allah. I'm just doing what Allah commands me to do. And that's how we should be. You do what Allah commands you to do to the best of your ability, and leave the end result to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you're trying to teach someone and guide them, then that's your job. Just teach them and guide them. Their answer, their response to your call, to your teaching, to your da'wah is not in your hands. It's in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even Allah told the Prophet ﷺ that you do not guide whom you love. Allah guides whom He wants. This is when his uncle died. إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ. That, Ya Muhammad, you do not guide someone just because you love them. Allah guides whom He wants. And this is how we should be in giving da'wah, or in just simple teaching, in anything. That you do your best, you do it sincerely for Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, but you know that the end result is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He guides whom He wants. So this trip, the Prophet ﷺ displayed sabr, patience. He displayed ar-rida, that he was pleased with what Allah decreed for him. That all these things happening to him, he knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed these things for him, and Allah is the best of planners, and he's content. He's happy with that. The Prophet ﷺ, we see that he continued in his da'wah to the people, and we see the love of the Sahaba for the Prophet ﷺ in Zayd ibn Haritha, where he used his own body, his own self to defend the Prophet ﷺ from harm. And this is how all of the Sahaba were. They would give their lives for the Prophet ﷺ in protecting him and helping the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Allah sent the angels as a way to ease his pain. And another event that happened on his way back to Mecca, another way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to ease his pain and give him some hope, is that the Prophet ﷺ, he was reading Quran one night on his way back, on the trip back to Mecca. He was reading Quran one night, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent some jinn, a group of jinn to the Prophet ﷺ, and they heard him recite the Quran and they became Muslim. And the Prophet ﷺ did not know there was jinn there at the time. When he was reading the Quran, reciting the Quran, Allah sent the jinn there to listen to the Quran. When that was happening, the Prophet didn't know the jinn were there, but he was just reading Quran. And we get this from the ayat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ أُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ أَنَّهُ اسْتَمَعَ نَفَرٌ مِّنَ الْجِنِّ فَقَالُوا إِنَّا سَمِعْنَا قُرْآنًا عَجَبًا. Allah is telling the Prophet ﷺ, tell the people, أُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ, that it has been revealed to me that the jinn have heard some of the Quran, and they said that we have heard something amazing. إِنَّا سَمِعْنَا قُرْآنًا عَجَبًا. We have heard an amazing Quran, like nothing we've ever heard before. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, وَإِذْ صَرَفْنَا إِلَيْكَ نَفَرًا مِّنَ الْجِنِّ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقُرْآنَ فَلَمَّا حَضَرُوهُ قَالُوا أَنصِتُوا فَلَمَّا قُضِيَ وَلَّوْا إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِمْ مُنذِرِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the same event that we have sent these jinn to you, and they listened to your recitation of the Quran. And the jinn would tell each other, listen, pay attention, focus. The jinn would tell each other to listen and pay attention and focus on the reading that the Prophet ﷺ is reciting of the Quran. And they became Muslim, they accepted Islam, and they even went back to the other jinn, the jinn that they're from, and they even warned them, they gave them the message, they gave da'wah. And this is jinn, because the Prophet ﷺ was sent to mankind and jinn with the message. The message is for Bani Adam, it's also for the jinn. And jinn are a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, created from smokeless fire that we do not see, but they're around us. We do not see them, but they see us. And they are responsible for entering into Islam just as human beings are. And they're also responsible for giving da'wah, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that they returned to their jinn, and they warned them, and they told them about what they heard, and they gave da'wah to the other jinn. So Allah revealed this to the Prophet ﷺ after it happened, and the Prophet learned that there were jinn there and that they accepted Islam. So to give the Prophet ﷺ more hope that even though a lot of the human beings from Mecca and Taif are not accepting Islam, the jinn are accepting Islam. And that the message is for both. And that if the people are not going to enter Islam, the jinn are going to enter into Islam. So this gave him hope and eased his pain some more. So on his way back into Mecca, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him these two miracles or signs of seeing the angels and the jinn accepting Islam. On his way back to Mecca, he reached back into Mecca from his trip to Taif, and his uncle is not alive anymore. So he doesn't have anyone to support him as his uncle did. Yes, there are Muslimin there, but they don't have the type of support and status that Abu Talib had to bring him back into Mecca, because Quraysh did not want Muhammad back in Mecca. They want him, removed. So the Prophet ﷺ sent Zayd ibn Haritha into Mecca and told him to go to certain families and ask them if they would receive the Prophet ﷺ and protect him, receive him back into Mecca and protect him. So Zayd ibn Haritha went to one family and they said they could not do it. He went to another family and they said they could not do it. And he went to a man by the name of Al-Mut'im ibn Adi. A man by the name of Al-Mut'im ibn Adi, and Zayd told him that Muhammad is here just outside of Mecca and he wants to come back into Mecca. We just came back from Al-Ta'if. He wants to come back into Mecca. Will you take him and protect him? Because he can't come alone by himself, because they're going to get him, Quraysh. So will you take him into your home and protect him? Can he come back into Mecca under your protection? So Al-Mut'im ibn Adi, he said yes. He said, I will take him under my protection, inshallah. He had a lot of sons. He had a large family. He had a lot of sons, and he told his sons, prepare yourselves. They put their armor on or whatever. They got prepared and they went to the outskirts of Mecca and they met the Prophet ﷺ, and he told him, you can come back into Mecca under my protection. And because he had a large family, no one could really stop him from doing this. And he said, Al-Mut'im ibn Adi, he said, Muhammad is coming back into Mecca under my protection. Whoever harms him, I will harm them. And Al-Mut'im ibn Adi, he wasn't a Muslim. He wasn't a Muslim at that time, but you see how the Arab were, that this is something that was part of their culture, that they help a person who is oppressed if they had the ability to. Even if the majority of the people were against them, if this person had an opened mind and an open heart and some rahmah, and that this person is still from Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ, born and raised in Mecca, he's from Mecca, he's from Quraysh, that this person is from us, then I am going to help him to the best that I can. If I'm able to, I'm going to help him. So he said, he took the Prophet ﷺ back into Mecca under his protection and the protection of his family. And Abu Jahl heard of this. And he told Al-Mut'im ibn Adi, are you taking him under your protection just to protect him, or are you one of his followers, meaning to have you become a Muslim? And Al-Mut'im said, no, I'm just taking him to protect him from harm. I have not become a Muslim. So he was not a Muslim at that time, and he took him under his protection, and the Prophet ﷺ returned back into Mecca, and the harm became less for him after this trip. So, in his time now back in Mecca, the mushrikeen, they wanted the Prophet ﷺ to show them some signs, some miracles or something, where they would ask him some questions about certain things. And one of the things they asked him about was Ar-Ruh, the soul. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. That they were asking questions that really had no benefit, and that they're leaving off the more important things that they should be asking about, and they're just asking about things just in a way of mocking the Prophet ﷺ. So they asked him about the soul. What is the soul? What is Ar-Ruh? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, tell them, Ar-Ruh min amri Rabbi, that Ar-Ruh is something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He created it. However it is, Allah said, kun fayakun, and that's how the Ruh is. We don't know exactly how the Ruh is. And this is what Allah told the Prophet ﷺ to answer them in. That say the Ruh is something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's it. And that we have only been given a small amount of knowledge in terms of these things. So they would ask him questions like this and mock him in some ways, because they couldn't harm him physically that much anymore. So they would do these things in a way of mocking, and they also asked him to show us some signs, some miracles, something that we've never seen before. They said, show us something that will make us believe. Show us something we've never seen before, or no one has ever heard of or seen before. And one of the things that happened is that they asked, some of the narrations say that Quraysh are the ones who asked the Prophet ﷺ to show us the splitting of the moon. And some say that it happened without them asking for that specific thing. So they told him, show us something that is not normal. And some said, we want to see the moon split. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by His will and His qudra and His power and His might, the Prophet ﷺ pointed to the moon and the moon split in two. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر. That the hour is near and the moon has split in two. So the Prophet ﷺ pointed to the moon and the moon split in two pieces, one on the right and one on the left. And they're all looking at it. All of Quraysh, all of the Arab, even the people who weren't in the group with the Prophet ﷺ around Mecca, they can still see the moon is split in two. And they've never seen anything like this before. And this is one of the miracles the Prophet, Allah gave to the Prophet ﷺ. And it's one of the things that no other prophet has been given something like this, like a very clear and obvious thing in the sky for the people to believe, for the people to come to Islam, that you're asking for something and it happens right away. But still they did not believe. Even with the moon split in two in front of them in the sky, they still did not believe in the message of al-Islam. And they would say that this is sihr. They're starting to make excuses. Even though they're the ones who asked for it, they said, sihrun mustamir, that this is magic. He's done some magic upon our eyes. It's not really real what we're seeing. So right away they start saying he's a liar and he's just doing magic and this is not real. And still they reject the message and they don't believe and they want to stay upon their deen. And all of this is just a way of mocking and as a joke to them. But they really want to stay upon their deen of ash-shirk. So these are some of the ayat, some of the miracles the Prophet ﷺ showed them for them to believe, but still they did not believe. And the Prophet ﷺ continued his da'wah in Mecca. Inshallah, we will stop here. Inshallah, we'll stop here with what we mentioned and we'll continue on next time, inshallah. Any questions?
So I think Mut'im ibn Adi, he never accepted Islam.
From what I know, he did not.
No, he did not.
He did not accept Islam. But the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned many years later that if al-Mut'im was something happened where the Prophet ﷺ, he had, I think, 70 asir, 70 kind of like servants, or Allahu alam exactly what, but he said if al-Mut'im ibn Adi was still alive, he would gift these 70 servants, or what they were, to al-Mut'im ibn Adi for helping him in his time in Mecca. But as far as him accepting Islam, from what I know, he did not accept Islam, Allahu alam, but he still recognized the help that he gave him, and that it did not go unnoticed, that he wanted to return the favor for him, for helping him in such a time and what he went through in Mecca from his people.
So for how long he protected the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
For what?
For how long?
For what?
The Mut'im protected the Prophet sallallahu
I believe it was until the Hijrah. So it was a couple years, because this happened around the 11th year after Bi'athah, and it remained until the Prophet ﷺ made Hijrah, which was the 13th year after Bi'athah. Because without this protection, then he would have been targeted by Quraysh and the Arab.
Quran mentioned many verses. Sarah. Is Sarah even the Yom Qiyamah taking place?
No. What's your question? Sorry.
The Quran, verses of Quran mention Sarah.
The Quran mentions Sa'ah.
Yeah. More than one verse.
اقتربت الساعة.
Yeah. So isn't the Sarah is the time of the Yom Qiyamah?
No. One of the ways Allah refers to Yawm al-Qiyamah is as-Sa'ah, meaning the hour when the Sa'ah begins, the hour, the time when Yawm al-Qiyamah begins and happens.
Right. So, but this one has depends. The Prophet was to come up. fire was different, some different time of, it was not referring to Yom al-Qiyamah.
The moon?
Yes, that thing.
Uh-huh.
It was not referring that.
It refers to Yom al-Qiyamah.
Yeah, but that one was referring to Yom al-Qiyamah as well. Or?
نعم اقتربت الساعة. نعم Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to the nearness of the hour. نعم يوم القيامة.
It was, is the moon is going to split again at the Sa'ah or not? Is that what you're asking?
What?
Are you mean, is the moon going to split again?
No.
Time of,
Well, yeah, exactly, yeah. Yom al-Qiyamah, yeah, exactly, yeah. That's what I
Is the moon going to split again?
Yeah, when the hour comes.
Allahu alam. No, the moon split in the past. The moon split in the past at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it back together. If it's going to split again, it's going to be destroyed. So you can call that splitting. The sun, the moon, it's all going to be folded up. So as for it splitting specifically like that, that was something that happened at the time of the Prophet ﷺ.
Quick comment. So that, the collision, everything that you're mentioning, that's Yawm al-Akhir. And Yawm al-Qiyamah is different. They're two different things.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you have any confusion, so Yawm al-Akhir is that when everything is going to be collided, everything will be destroyed.
Maybe that's what he's
Then
referring
Yawm
to.
al-Qiyamah will come. So Yawm al-Qiyamah and Yawm al-Akhir are two different events. So you can explain it.
No, so maybe that's what you were referring to. The brother is saying Yawm al-Akhir and Yawm al-Qiyamah are two different things. Yawm al-Akhir is when this dunya ends. Everything is destroyed, the earth, the moon, the sun, and all the people die. It's Yawm al-Akhir. Yawm al-Qiyamah is when everyone is resurrected in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the hisab starts. Two maybe almost similar names, but different events. No,
that time.
No, it's all part of the beginning of the Akhirah. الساعة يوم القيامة اليوم الآخر. It's all beginning of the Akhirah, the next life.
So after attaining prophethood, the Prophet still engaged in business, or how was he earning his livelihood?
Was he still engaged in business?
Or his source of income?
Allahu alam if he was still engaged in business, because his main focus was da'wah, but his Sahaba, Abu Bakr was very rich, and other Sahaba, they were very rich, but I don't believe he was still involved in the business, traveling for business like he was with Khadija radiallahu anha, or with the ghanam, taking care of the herds, the sheep, when he was younger. But he was very poor. After prophethood, he barely had enough clothes, food. He would enter his home, he did not have any food. So I don't believe he wasn't involved in the business as he was before. He was very poor, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provided for him from the people around him, from his Sahaba, in many ways. No. But it was very little what he had. He experienced a lot of wealth in his life, and he experienced poverty. He experienced all types of life, all types of lifestyles in his life. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Inshallah, we'll stop here. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.